Hello, my dear students. Today I am going to start a new chapter of history section, that is chapter number 4, Rural Life and Societies. We had learned that Mughal Empire had a centralized revenue collection system. Land was accessed and the tax was calculated on the basis of the assessment. One third of the produce was generally collected as tax. The Mansabdari system created a class of officials who were responsible for the revenue collection. They were a part of central administration. At the provincial and the village levels too, there were officials appointed for this task. However, the efficiency of the system gradually declined as the Mughal Empire began to crumble. At this time, the system of Ijara farming was introduced. Under this system, the tax collectors were appointed to collect tax. They could keep one tenth of the tax for themselves. They were tempted to exploit the peasants and collect more tax for their own benefit. The revenue collectors' position soon became hereditary. However, these zamindars did not have ownership of the land. They could only collect revenue. Although the farmers were extremely dependent on the climate and the rains, village managed to attain a level of self-sufficiency. Sir Charles Metcalfe, a British administrator, called them little republics. There were weekly markets where people gathered to exchange goods. Although irrigation facilities were provided by the rulers, they did not meet the farmers' need completely. When the British received the Diwani of Bengal, they felt the need to work out a revenue collection system. Initially, the revenue was collected on their behalf by a Reza Khan, but this system was soon abandoned due to corruption and mismanagement. A series of famines ravaged Bengal in this period. However, revenue collection was still carried out ruthlessly. At this stage, the English East India Company decided to start collecting revenue directly. The first Governor General Warren Hastings decided to auction revenue collecting rights. This meant that any bidder who promised to collect the highest amount of revenue was given the charge of a particular area. This led to great exploitations of the farmers. Cultivators in some villages ran away to avoid taxation. The company was also unable to rely on a certain fixed income as the revenue amount changed every year. The English East India Company now realized that it would have to work out some different mechanisms, some other ways which address this problem, which could solve this problem and assure it of a steady income from the agricultural revenue. So, when Lord Cornwallis became the Governor General, he introduced a land revenue system called permanent settlement. We have already learned this in previous lessons. It was introduced in Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, and some parts of Madras Presidency. The zamindars were made hereditary owner of the land. This meant that the farmers became their tenants and lost their rights to forest, ponds, and common lands. The tax amount was fixed permanently. The permanent settlement was justified on the basis that would prevent corruption, as revenue officials would not be able to alter the land revenue at will. The East India Company also claimed that since no extra land revenue would be asked for, any increase in revenue would be invested back in the land. Thus, it will help to improve the production. It was also hoped that a new class of zamindars would be created who will be the allies of East India Company. Supporters of Permanent Settlement Act pointed out that the financial security would be created and that wastelands and forests would also be brought under cultivation. The brunt of the new system fell on the farmers who were greatly oppressed. Forced labor and growing of commercial crops were thrust upon the farmers by the zamindars to meet the revenue demand. Often, the zamindars were unable to meet the commitment of the land revenue. Consequently, up to one third of the zamindaris were auctioned within the first 3 decades of the Permanent Settlement Act. So, what do you think? What were the advantages of the Permanent Settlement Act? The company was assured regular income even during the adverse climatic conditions. The new landlords became a class of loyalists for the company. The British could use the new landlord for consolidating their political authority. Income of the company increased. And what are the demerits or disadvantages? Disadvantages we can say for the farmers. The farmers had to pay the revenue even if the crops failed. In order to gain maximum revenue, the farmers were forced to cultivate cash crops such as indigo and cotton instead of rice and wheat. Neither the British nor the landlords took any interest in improving the agricultural methods. The actual cultivators of the lands were left at the mercy of the zamindars, who acted as the political allies of the British and helped them to continue their rule in India. While the permanent settlement was introduced across the eastern India, there was no zamindari system that existed in the South India. Thomas Munro, the governor of Madras Presidency between 1820 to 1827, initiated a land revenue arrangement that came to be known as Royatwari system. The system was introduced in the Bombay and the Madras Presidencies, Sindh and Assam. This system is also called as Munro system. According to this system, the peasants or the Royats were considered the owner of the land and the land revenue was collected directly from them. The rate of the revenue was fixed at roughly half of the produce and it was settled for a period of 30 years, after which it could be revised. Now, what was the effect of Royatwari system? It recognized the peasants as the owner of their own lands. High rates of revenue made them dependent on the moneylenders. Now, talking about the Mahalwari settlement, this system was introduced by Holt Mackenzie. First, it was started in 1822, but it was not that successful. In 1833, under the governorship of William Bentinck, introduced in northwestern provinces, Punjab, the Ganga Valley, and parts of central India. In the Mahalwari system, land was community owned by a group of village called mahals. The task of collecting revenue and paying to the company was given to the headman of each mahal called Talukadar. Under this system, the condition of the farmers became miserable. So, what were the effects of this Mahalwari settlement? These revenue policies proved to be a disaster for the farmers. Land became a saleable commodity. Begari or bonded labor increased. Self sufficiency of the village was destroyed. Agriculture continued to be stagnant as neither the British nor the landlords took steps to improve it. Famines continued to be a regular feature as land productivity failed. This was the period of industrial revolution in Europe. European factories produced goods at cheap rates which the Indian craftsmen could not compete with. The low demand for handicrafts led many artisans and craftsmen to leave towns and go back to agriculture. This created an over dependence on the agriculture. In the colonial period, the nature of the agriculture in India changed due to the industrial revolutions. Factories had started operating on large scale in England. They created a huge demand for certain raw materials such as jute, cotton, rubber, and indigo. These were called cash crops as they were sold directly for cash. They were not consumed in village at all. The British forced the peasants to grow these crops and sell them at a very low rates. Due to lack of storage facilities, the crops had to be sold all at once after the harvest. The farmers could only get low prices for the crops. The income from the cash crops was too little to return the loans taken from the moneylenders. As farmers were unable to grow food crops for their own consumptions, they were further impoverished. Although it was believed the commercialization of agriculture would make India a part of global economy, in reality, India became an exporter of cheap raw materials. A number of devastating famines in India were caused due to administrative and economic policies of the British. This was because of millions of acres of land were used to cultivate crops that were exported out the country to benefit the British economy instead of being used to grow food crops which could be consumed by Indian themselves. No efforts were made by the British administration to provide any kind of relief or help. Nearly one third of Bengal's population perished due to hunger. Irrigation was not new in India. Tanks, wells, canals had been used for many hundred of years. With the arrival of British, modern technology was introduced to bring more land under cultivation and irrigate more acres. However, the construction of irrigation facilities was not adequate to keep the expansion of agriculture. This was demonstrated by the wave of famines and broke out in this period. Very few technological improvements were made in agriculture. The old types of tools were being used. The use of chemical fertilizers was significant. Agriculture colleges were very few in numbers. Most farmers were illiterate. The government too did not take the responsibility of modernizing the agriculture. Indian farmers were forced to grow commercial or cash crops such as tea, coffee, indigo, jute, oilseeds, as I said. Many of these crops provided raw materials for the industries in Britain. These crops were grown on large estates called plantations owned by the Europeans. Land revenue settlements and plantation agriculture made the farmers and other tribal groups rise up in rebellion against the Britishers. This revolt sought expression in various forms of uprising such as Indigo Revolt 1859, Munda Rebellion 1899, Champaran Movement, etc. Indigo was the first crop to be grown on the British plantations as the British required a regular supply of indigo for its textile industries. Farmers had to sell it for cheaper rates to the British. The continued growth of indigo on the best land decreased the fertility and productivity of the land, often making it barren for further cultivation. The operation, torture, and exploitations of farmers for indigo cultivation resulted in the peasant revolt in Bengal in 1859 in Govindpur village of Nadia district. This revolt was led by Bishnu Charan Biswas and Digambar Biswas. Other leaders were Molla of Pabna and Rafiq Mandal of Malda. The revolt was suppressed by the Britishers. Talking about the Pabna revolt, Pabna farmers was a resistant movement by the peasants against the lords of the land in Bengal. It originated in the Yusuf Shahi Parangana of Pabna. It was led by Keshav Chandra Roy. The zamindars collected money. Large crowds of farmers gathered and marched. The Roys developed a strong awareness of the law. The Deccan Roys, the farmers revolted in the district of Pune. The farmers revolted against the local moneylenders. It spread over 33 villages and resulted in passing the Deccan Agriculturist Relief Act. Sannyasi and Fakir revolts. It was the major revolt of sannyasis of Bengal. Majnu Shah and Musa Shah, Chirag Ali, Bhavani Pathak and Devi Chaudhrani were the major leader of this revolt. They had several encounters with the company's troop from 1763 to 1800. They plundered factories at Dhaka while the officials exploited the weavers. Farmers and the soldiers of the disbanded army of Nawabs Fakirs were the member of this band. The company's army officials at Purnia informed the Mungir commander in 1770 that the salary of the soldiers should not be sent without the strong escort party. Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay in the novel Anand Mata had depicted the role of the sannyasis. The Farazi movement. The Farazis were the followers of Muslim religious movement. Hazi Shariatullah of Bengal was the leader. They resisted the operations of the farmers by the Britishers. Talking about the Wahhabi revolt, it was organized by Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi with an objective to overthrow the British yoke. The large number of farmers and craftspersons of Bengal and Bihar participated in this revolt. After the Battle of Plassey, many revolts took place against the British in different parts of India. They did not pose any threat to the British rule because most of the revolt were unorganized and targeted against the misery of common people, which were easily crushed by the British. Punjab was known as the land of five rivers, and it was annexed by the British in 1849. The major occupation of the people was farming. They wanted to maximize their profits from the fertile land of Punjab. Due to strategic positions and consolidation of the empire, the British tried to gain the support of the local people. Their revenue policies were not oppressive in Punjab as those in Bengal and Bihar. Due to agricultural prosperity in Punjab, the farmers did not revolt against the British. Even after the first war of independence, the people of Punjab did not take active part in the mass revolt. So, this was all for this lesson. Students, please read the lesson properly. The answers will be forwarded in the WhatsApp group. Complete it afterwards.